I first noticed the house because it was the only one with its lights on. Not in a dramatic way, not blazing or flickering, just awake. The rest of the street settled into darkness, the way residential streets always do. Porch lights clicking off one by one, windows dimming until only the occasional television glow remained. But the last house, the one set slightly back from the curb at the end of the road, never joined them. Its light stayed steady through midnight, through the early hours, through the kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own breathing. I didn't think anything of it at first. Some people work nights. Some people leave lights on. It was only later, after I'd been there a while, that I realized I'd never seen those lights turn off. Not once. I was on the street because of a short-term job, the kind you take when you don't want to commit to anything long enough to regret it. Council maintenance, overnight checks, light repairs, meter readings, reports no one wanted to do during the day. The street wasn't marked as special on my paperwork, just another quiet residential stretch. Identical houses on both sides, modest front yards, neat fences, bins tucked in close to garage doors. The only thing that stood out was the spacing. The houses were evenly placed right up until the end, where the last one sat a little farther back, like it had taken a step away from the others and no one had corrected it. When I parked my van near the middle of the street and stepped out into the night air, I felt that familiar sense of being somewhere calm enough to let your guard down. That should have been the warning. The first night I worked there, I was replacing a faulty streetlight near the corner. I climbed down from the ladder around 2 a.m. and glanced down the road without really meaning to. Every house was dark except the last one. Curtains drawn, lights on behind them, a soft glow leaking out around the edges like the house was thinking about something. I remember checking my watch and thinking it was odd because it was late enough that even night owls usually settle. As I packed up my tools, I noticed a man standing on his porch 2 houses down from the end. He wasn't smoking. He wasn't on his phone. He was just standing there in his dressing gown, watching the lit house like it might move if he looked away. When I caught his eye, he looked embarrassed, like I'd seen him doing something private. He went inside without a word and closed the door carefully behind him. Over the next few nights, I started to notice patterns, not dramatic ones, practical ones. People on the street slept lightly. You could see it in the way curtains shifted, in the way porch lights flicked on briefly and then off again. Someone was always awake somewhere, checking. The last house stayed lit no matter the hour. Sometimes one room, sometimes several, never all dark. And there was something else, something that took longer to register. No one ever visited it. No cars in the driveway, no footsteps on the path, no deliveries. The house was occupied without being used. It existed in a state of constant attention, like a patient on life support everyone pretended wasn't there. I asked about it on my 3rd night, casually, the way you ask about a barking dog or a neighbor who parks too close to your driveway. I was chatting with a woman who lived opposite the end house while I checked a meter near her fence. I nodded toward it and said, "Someone's always up late down there." She followed my gaze, and for just a moment, her face did something I hadn't seen before. Not fear, calculation. She glanced up and down the street before answering, as if checking who might overhear. "We take turns," she said quietly. "It's easier that way." I waited for her to elaborate, but she didn't. She just smiled in a tired way and added, "You'll get used to it." When I asked what she meant by taking turns, she shook her head. "It's not your problem," she said. "Not unless you're responsible for it." That word stuck with me. Responsible. Like the house was a task that needed supervision. The first time I went inside was not my idea. A few nights later, my supervisor called to tell me there'd been a report of a flickering light in one of the rooms. "Probably just a loose fitting," he said. "Take a look if you're nearby." I remember staring at the address on my phone for a long time before starting the van. The last house on the street, the one that never slept. When I pulled up out front, the lights inside were on like always, warm and steady. The place looked well kept. Fresh paint, clean windows. The kind of house someone cared for, even if no one seemed to live in it the way people normally do. The front door was unlocked. That should have bothered me more than it did. Instead, it felt expected, like the house had been waiting. Inside, the air was warmer than outside and faintly stale, like a room that's been occupied too long without being refreshed. The living room was neat to the point of discomfort. Furniture arranged, but never used. Cushions uncreased. No personal photos, no clutter. Just objects placed where they belonged. Lamps glowed softly in the corners, casting overlapping pools of light that made it hard to tell where shadows should fall. The television was on, volume low, tuned to a channel that played static, interspersed with faint, half-formed voices. Not loud enough to understand, just enough to register. I told myself it was there to discourage intruders. I told myself a lot of things. I checked the faulty light in the back room and found nothing wrong with it. The switch worked fine. The bulb was secure. Still, I stayed longer than I needed to, walking slowly through the house, noticing things I couldn't quite name. Every room was lit, but not brightly, enough to be aware of, enough to avoid darkness without creating comfort. I realized then that there were no bedrooms in the usual sense, no beds, no signs of rest, just rooms arranged for waiting, chairs positioned to face doorways, lamps angled toward corners, radios left on at low volume in places where no one stood. The house wasn't designed to be lived in. It was designed to be watched. When I left, I felt an immediate sense of relief, like stepping out of a space that had been holding its breath. The moment the front door closed behind me, the pressure eased. I locked it without being told to. As I walked back down the street, I noticed movement in other houses. Curtains shifting, lights turning off one by one. The street relaxed. That was when I understood the shape of the arrangement. The last house stayed awake, so the rest of them could sleep. Over the following weeks, I learned more without anyone explaining anything. The responsibility rotated. Some nights, the house was brighter. Other nights, just a few rooms were lit. When the lights dimmed too much, neighbors stirred. Someone would wake, switch something on, sit up with a book or a radio. If no one did, the house seemed to respond. I noticed it in small ways at first. A room that felt larger than before. A hallway that took an extra second to cross. Once, when I stepped inside to check a fuse, I could have sworn the back wall was farther away than it had been the week before. Not stretched, just less reachable, like the house had inhaled. I made the mistake of staying too long one night. I was tired, running on bad sleep and worse coffee, and the house was warm and quiet in a way that felt almost inviting. I sat in one of the chairs facing a doorway just for a moment and closed my eyes without meaning to. I didn't fall asleep, not fully, but something slipped. A thought, maybe, a memory. When I opened my eyes, the room felt heavier. The light hadn't changed, but the edges of the walls felt less certain, like they were considering alternatives. I stood up immediately, heart racing, and the feeling receded, but not entirely. It left behind a sense of being watched, not by eyes, but by the space itself, as if the house had noticed the lapse and logged it. After that, I understood the real rule. It wasn't about light, it was about awareness. The house didn't need noise. It didn't need people inside it constantly. It needed to be acknowledged. It needed someone, somewhere, to be holding on to themselves hard enough that nothing leaked. Because that's what sleep does. It loosens things. It lets pieces drift. And the last house was built to collect whatever drifted free. I started recognizing the signs in people. Neighbors who volunteered too often to check in on the house looked thinner after a while. Not physically, internally. Their conversations trailed off mid-thought. They forgot small things, names, appointments, the shape of their own routines. They weren't harmed. They were lightened. The house took what wasn't being actively held, dreams, unfinished thoughts, the parts of you that wander when you stop paying attention. That's why no one slept there. Sleep would feed it too much, too quickly. One night, close to dawn, I saw someone standing in the upstairs window of the last house. Just a silhouette, still and attentive, framed by the glow of a lamp. I recognized them. A man from 2 doors down. He joked with me once about the job, said he preferred nights because it was easier to stay awake than to wake up again. The sight of him there made my stomach turn. He wasn't trapped. He was doing his part, holding watch, keeping the house from taking more than it was allowed. When the light in that room flicked off a few minutes later, I saw porch lights up and down the street turn on in response, like a ripple. The burden shifted. The system held. I stopped taking jobs on that street not long after. I told my supervisor I was unavailable. No explanation. No fuss. But even now, sometimes, when I can't sleep and I'm lying in the dark with my thoughts getting loose, I think about that house. I think about how carefully everyone else learned to manage it. How the street was arranged not around fear, but around responsibility. The last house wasn't a mistake. It was a solution. A place to put what people couldn't afford to lose all at once. And on nights when my own thoughts start to drift, when I feel myself slipping towards sleep too fast, I find myself turning on a light without thinking. Just one, just enough to stay aware. Because once you know there are places that collect what you let go of, you understand why some things should never be allowed to sleep.